somewhere in this pile of Edinger, I found reference to this book, which is Encounter with the Self, Analysis, Jungian Commentary on William Blake's Illustrations of the Book of Job. Okay, so that's what you have in front of you, is Blake's illustrations. And the interesting thing is, I mean, Blake lived in the late 18th century and early 19th century. So he put these engravings together when he was 65 years old and published them in 1825. So 75 years before Freud even really got cooking, and before Jung definitely got cooking, because it was 50 years before Jung was born, right? I got this yesterday in the mail. It's a used copy, okay, Encounter with the Self. And Edinger actually refers to it in one of his lectures, and he considers it his portable analytic hour. So anybody can buy this, and you got problems, pull this out and just read through it, you know, and it'll chill you out. No kidding. And you know, I was thinking, I should mention this. I was thinking that we all have these encounters with the greater personality. Okay, now for women it's easy because that experience is the experience of motherhood. Okay, because you have an encounter, first of all, with the animus that causes you to get pregnant, right? Anyway, I'm talking about women's experience with the encounter with the greater personality, right? And so when you're an ingenue and you're going through the Venus archetype, you know, it's all about looking great and, you know, being attractive to men, and oh my God, I've got to have my makeup just right and all that stuff, right? And then you have the encounter with the animus, right? Because the animus tells you that's the guy, right? I want that guy. And then you have a wound, namely, oh my God, I'm pregnant, right? and then there's the wrestling, possibly with wrestling with whether you should have the baby or not, but also just wrestling with, oh my God, this is going to be painful, right? I mean, I'm looking at you because I know you're a mother. Pardon?
The thing I noticed was that, oh my God, something's in control of me.
Mm-hmm. Something's in control of me.
That's taking over my body.
That's right. And it's an alien being.
Especially when the little foot comes up.
Yeah. And so you have to wrestle with that for 9 months, or wrestle with the possibility of having an abortion, and then finally you have this divine revelation, which is you give birth, and boom, you're in the mother archetype, no matter what. And actually, Elaine Mansfield wrote a great article about it called something like Encounters with the Mother Archetype, and she was talking about the fact that, you know, she was a hippie and she was out climbing mountains when she was 6 months pregnant and all of that, and then boom, all of a sudden the mother archetype took over, and she was off on that tangent. And that's kind of an experience with God. I mean, tell me, yes? Is it kind of? I mean,
the first year, then they had the terrible twos. No, I'm kidding.
Well, right. Okay. No, but it's sort of
it's the dark archetype.
Right, for the first year, but it's an instantaneous thing
And I guess
that takes over your psyche. And although you haven't had children, you must have been around plenty of women who have, and seen the same thing happening, where they just all of a sudden they're just all about this baby. I mean, I was over at Quiet Waters Park the other day, and I sat down next to this woman who had a 5-month-old baby, and the two of them were interacting like nobody's business. And you could see that mother archetype at work, and she just wasn't conscious. She didn't care about the rest of the world. It was all about this baby. And
Just look at Facebook and new parents.
I'm sure.
All pictures and
What about girls that are like they're petrified? Oh my god, I don't know what to do. That never had like a mentor or mother, they taught them what to do.
Right.
So then this baby, they're not sure what to do. But then as soon as they have that baby boy, they know exactly what to do.
Exactly. It just happens, right? And so that's kind of this experience. I mean, that's a big version of this encounter. And the little version is the time you gave it to me on the Pollock picture that I've been wrestling with for 20 years or so. And you just made a comment, and all of a sudden I got it on recording here that you just hit it, and boom, that was it. That was definitely it. I mean, it wasn't all of it, but it was part of it. But then men, okay, so let's talk about men. Men were wrestling with the greater personality in the form of the U.S. government in Bill's and my time, U.S. government about to send us off to war. And that was a kind of wound. It was, realizing that, your government was ready to put your life on the line, and you had to persevere through it somehow. You either had to go in, which both of us did, into the service, or you had to run away somehow. But either way, it was a constellation of the warrior archetype. Either way, I mean, because if you became official warriors, which Bill and I both did, then that's pretty cut and dry. But my friends who didn't serve, they were warriors even more so than us in some ways. Okay, because they didn't go along. They didn't accept the collective idea of, you got to do this, type thing. And it wasn't that I was accepting the collective idea per se, but it was something, because I grew up in that environment, was something I felt I should do. And when everybody was objecting to Vietnam, all the I don't know who were the famous anti-war guys back then.
Muhammad Ali.
Well, Muhammad Ali is an example, but
He went to jail.
yeah, he went to jail instead of serving.
A lot of teachers he wrote.
Yeah, but I mean, there were all these hippie-like protesters, right? And their way of going was harder than ours, because they had to fight the collective in order to do that.
Sort of.
Pardon?
Sort of.
Well,
I
and
mean, I remember when I got out of the Army and I went immediately back to the university, and some of the papers I was writing for my English class had to do with the protest I saw, it was used more as a social occasion for most of the people out there.
Mhm.
They weren't really protesting; they were just taking advantage of the opportunity to
meet other people.
around beautiful women and,
Right.
and smoke pot.
Right. And of course, women were protesting very heavily, and this comes down to this fundamental issue that Edinger was talking about, and Jung was talking about, the difference between logos and eros. And so Edinger is very clear that although he says that Jung's work may be considered a kind of scripture in the future, it isn't a religion, okay? Because Eros is where religions are, okay? And so that's actually a feminine thing. And, you know, I remember when I was, you know, a young father and I was in a church, a Reformed church, and you know, I was a lawyer, and so I was very about rules and all that stuff, right? But I would go to church on Sunday, and I ultimately became a deacon in this Reformed church, and I couldn't figure it out because I said, there's no God there. There's no God there. So, you know, what's this about? I didn't get it at that time, and the pastor was no good. I mean, he didn't understand this either, and so, but I remember saying to other people that, you know, when I go to church on Sunday, when I come out of the service, I feel better.
Really?
I do feel better.
I say that too.
Pardon?
I say that too
When you go.
I get a, I mean, I
You
get
had a
Christian
better church than
but I
when I was
like
a
all
kid.
of it. You didn't feel better?
Yeah, it,
It,
right, and so I do feel better. I mean, even today when I go to church, or even when I go to one of my Buddhist meditations, I feel better afterward. Okay, it has.
Buddhism seems more like Jungian because it doesn't approach the Almighty God. It looks for enlightenment.
Right, but it looks for enlightenment. It doesn't look. Does it look for the shadow? It tries to avoid the shadow. It tries to put the shadow out of its misery.
I don't know enough about it.
Okay, by seeking enlightenment, it's always going for the light. It's like the moth to the flame, right?